Vice President at SkyView Partners, and I'm happy to welcome you to our session today on an introduction to configuring iAccess servers to use SSL, presented by Carol Woodbury. Due to popular demand, Carol has actually updated this presentation. Some of you may have seen it in the past, but this is a new and improved version of configuring iAccess to use SSL, and will include not only step-by-step configuration guidance, but also a great discussion on the benefits and challenges of using certificates from a well-known CA versus a self-signed certificate, as well as practical tips for enterprise implementation. We hope you enjoyed today's session. It's presented and sponsored by all of us here at SkyView Partners. We're happy to have you join us. SkyView Partners is a leader in security services and products for IBM I, AIX, and Linux, and our goal is to draw on the unparalleled expertise of our team of experts led by Carol Woodbury to become members of our client's IT group, where we pay attention to security details so our clients don't have to. Carol Woodbury is the co-founder, president, and CTO of SkyView Partners. Prior to forming SkyView, Carol spent 16+ years at IBM in positions including Chief Engineering Manager and Security Architect for IBM's Enterprise Server Group. She's also an award-winning speaker and acknowledged leader on security topics, as well as the author of the book, IBM I Security, Administration, and Compliance. SkyView Partners has numerous solutions that help our clients, including our newly successful managed security service. If you haven't seen this, I encourage you to contact us afterwards and get more information. SkyView's managed security service is a monthly offering where SkyView security experts led by Carol will pay attention to your IBM I security so that you don't have to. Actually, this service is also available for AIX and Linux. We also continue to offer security checkups, an annual vulnerability scanning, where we review results and communicate with you on those results, as well as our security improvement services and remediations. SkyView software includes our risk assessor for IBM I, our independent vulnerability assessment, the SkyView Policy Minder, which is for IBM I, as well as for open systems, an automated security audit administration tool, as well as SkyView Audit Journal Reporter, predefined auditor-ready reports. And all SkyView Partner software is available on an unlimited software license. I'm also happy to announce our newest SkyView Security Deep Dive Training for IBM I, taught by Carol. It will be January 27th through 28th, 2015, and held in Las Vegas, Nevada. If you want more information or would like to see a copy of the agenda for that, you can go to the website www.skyviewpartners.com/contact-deep-dive-training, and we hope that you can join us there in Las Vegas. So with that, I want to introduce and start our session on Introduction to Configuring iAccess Servers to Use SSL, presented by Carol Woodbury. Hello, Carol.
Hey, JD. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about SSL. So let me just pop up the screen here. Okay, the reason that we are talking about SSL today is because there are a lot of organizations that have not yet considered making encrypted connections between their clients and their IBM I, or between IBM I to another IBM I, using something like a Telnet client between the two, or FTP. So because there is such a need out here, I decided that I would bring back this session, and I have updated it and have some more of the considerations that you will need to make while configuring SSL. Now, it's not a difficult process, but it's kind of a multi-step process. And so what we're going to do today is go between the slides and the actual configuration of SSL on the system. So what you might want to do is take a moment and download the handouts before we begin. And after I get out of the presentation, I'll show you where to download those from. And that way you can make some notes on the actual slides that contain the screenshot of where we're going through. So We'll look at how SSL works. We will have a discussion about certificate authorities, and then we'll actually go into, and again, do a live configuration of DCM, which is Digital Certificate Manager. We'll also do the actual configuration of the IBM iAccess servers, so like the 5250 client and iNavigator. I'll show you how to SSL enable an HTTP server application, as well as have a discussion on considerations going forward. So the way that Secure Sockets Layer works, or SSL, there's a handshake. So a request is made of the server, so a client requests of the server that it needs to make an SSL connection. The server has to authenticate itself, so it needs a digital certificate to do that. It encrypts this data that the client sent to it and sends it back to the client, and then if the client trusts the server, then an encrypted session will continue on. So I don't know about you, but those words don't mean a whole lot to me, so I am more visual. So let's look at it in more of a visual form. Say you're sitting in front of your workstation and you either have a browser session that is requesting an HTTPS session, or maybe you are attempting to use a 5250 session and sign on to IBM I, and you want that to happen over an encrypted session, an SSL session. So you launch your request from your client, from your workstation, and that request goes up to the IBM I. The server that catches that request, be it Telnet or one of the database servers that service ODBC or FTP or the HTTP servers, if they have been assigned a certificate, they will be able to service the request for an encrypted session. So as part of that request coming from the client will send a string of information, and that string of information goes up with the request. The server catches it. It will take that information and encrypt it, and it will encrypt it as part of or by using the private key that is associated with the digital certificate that's been assigned to it. So it encrypts the information. It sends the encrypted information back to the client along with the digital certificate. So the client then catches this request coming back. It decrypts the information using the public key and says, okay, nothing has changed since I made this original request, so it's still the same request, but now I need to take a look at that digital certificate that's been passed back, and I have to make sure that I trust who has issued that digital certificate. So in the client perspective, there's this thing called a list of trusted signers, or basically a list of this thing called a certificate authority that it trusts. Now, a certificate authority is simply who has issued the digital certificate. So the client has got to trust the certificate authority that has issued the digital certificate that's coming back. Once it establishes that the certificate authority is trusted, then the rest of the session is encrypted. So it's that initial handshake that actually takes the time when an SSL session is established. But once that initial handshake occurs, the rest of the encryption is actually very quick. All right, so that's how SSL actually works. The question is, who is going to issue the certificate? So that's a question because you have two options. There are these things called well-known CAs, and you've probably heard of them. They are companies like VeriSign or Thought or GeoTrust. There's a number of them that are fairly well-known in the industry. So those are called well-known CAs. And as I was saying, whoever issues, whichever CA issues the certificate, that certificate authority's name must be listed in the list of trusted signers. So it depends on what interface you're using as to where that list is. If you're using Internet Explorer, they're in one location. In Firefox, they're in another. If you're using iAccess, they're located in the IBM Key Management section. So, and they're called signer certificates. But basically, the issue is that the client has got to trust who's issued the certificate. So the difference between getting a certificate from a well-known certificate and a private certificate, or a local CA as sometimes they're called, is basically the work that it's going to take to get a local CA certificate into that list of trusted signers. So one of the things about a well-known, or sometimes called a public certificate authority, is that that name is already listed in either the browser list or in the list that comes with iAccess. So there's one less step to do if that CA is already listed with the client, and we'll see that later. You would definitely want to use a well-known CA for any kind of public website that you might have running off your IBM i. That's so you don't get that crazy message when you go to a website that says, hey, this signer certificate is not trusted. And I don't know about you, but I kind of always look twice when I get that and think as to whether I want to continue on with that browser session. So any kind of public website, you want to use a well-known CA so the client knows who that certificate authority comes from. The other thing about a well-known CA is that it must be purchased. I'm going to show you how you can actually use your IBM i as the certificate authority, and that's free. I mean, all of that software and all of that capability comes with IBM i. So you don't have to pay for any additional certificates. Unlike when you get it from a well-known CA, you do have to pay for those certificates. So that might be a consideration for you. The other benefit, however, with a well-known CA is that they will help you manage those certificates. So in other words, if it comes time and that CA certificate expires, because all digital certificates have an expiration, whether it's the one associated with the certificate authority itself or the actual server certificate that's assigned to, like, the Telnet server or the database server, all digital certificates expire. And so if you don't have somebody telling you that that certificate is about to expire and it actually expires, then any connection that you're trying to make with those certificates won't work. So say you've gone to the trouble of setting everyone up to use SSL, everyone's using 5250 clients, and they now use an SSL connection, and that SSL certificate that's assigned to the Telnet server expires. So the next day, everybody comes in and they can't connect to the IBM i. Not exactly the day that you want to face. So the nice thing about getting a certificate from a well-known CA is that they're going to notify you months in advance that that certificate is actually expiring. So with private certificate authorities or local CAs, most likely that CA is not in the client's list of trusted signers. So that's one extra step that you have to take to get that CA certificate listed in the list of trusted signers. So that's one additional step in the configuration process. So there are no fees associated with it, so that's certainly a benefit. But again, versus the well-known CA, a private CA will have no notification of impending expiration of those certificates. So you have to discipline yourself to either issue new server certificates every year and assign them so that you have a fresh one every year, or you have to make a note in your calendar and hope you don't switch calendar applications. You have to do something to make sure that your certificates don't expire. All right, So when we look at a certificate authority, be it a well-known CA or a local CA, there's actually several types of certificates that it can issue. The two that we are going to be concentrating on today are the one that is associated with the certificate authority itself, and that's the one that has to be in that list of trusted signers. And then the server certificate, and that's the certificate that's actually assigned to the servers on IBMI, the Telnet server, the database server, the FTP server, and so forth. They can also do object signing certificates and user certificates, but those are a topic for another discussion, and we're not going to be going there today. So from an IBMI perspective, to get a certificate assigned to your servers, you must have Digital Certificate Manager installed, DCM as it's commonly known. You also need to have the HTTP server installed, and the admin instance has to be started. And you need to be able to sign on with a profile that has all object and SecAdmin. Notice I did not say that you had to sign on with QSecOffer. That is not a requirement. The requirement is all object and SecAdmin. All right, so the first scenario that we're going to walk through today is using a well-known certificate authority for the certificate. So I'm going to bounce out of the presentation, and we're going to head right to the configuration. Before I do that, I want to show you where you can download the handouts. So if you go to our homepage, SkyViewPartners.com, you go to Webinars, and you scroll down to the bottom of that page, you will be able to download the handouts from previous webinars that we've done. And this was a Coffee with Carol presentation. So you can pause this video, download the handouts, and follow along that way. All right, now that you're back from printing out those handouts, we are going to start the configuration. So we have to go to DCM, and we do that by actually getting signed on to the system director. So we'll do that. So SkyView 3 is the name of my system, :2001. Okay, so that will redirect me to this to the IBM director. Now, what I find funny is that we're talking about a security configuration, and this is one of those connections that's untrusted because it doesn't know about the certificate. So it's kind of funny we're getting the security warning, but I understand the risks, and you should too, and you should add the exception for this particular site. So this is how Firefox brings up those untrusted connection messages. So I'm on System iDirector, and so I just need to sign on with somebody that has all object and SecAdmin, so I'm doing that. And I get the home page for the system director, and it will take a moment to load here. So what I really want to do is go to the IBMI task page. All right, and the thing that I want to click on is Digital Certificate Manager. And I have to sign on yet again. Okay. So this is basically the home page for Digital Certificate Manager. So before I can do anything, I need to create a new certificate store. I need to be able to, this is basically your storage unit or your placeholder for the server certificate that we're going to request be created for us. So I have to create a new certificate store. So what has happened here is that I have created a certificate store before this, and so I already had one on the system because I've done this multiple times, and I didn't delete it before I came into this demo, so shame on me. So if you have already been into DCM, you will follow this, but if you have never been into DCM, what you will need to do at that point is take the shortcut that says Create New Certificate Store, and you're going to create the system certificate store, and that's outlined in your handouts for you. So just go ahead and do that now. Pause the video, create your certificate store, and then catch up with me as I select the certificate store. And what you want is the system one. All right, so when you created the system store, you had to assign a password. Now, if you've been into DCM, just like I was, and had already created that system store, and you have forgotten your password, no worries. There's this button called Reset Password. So if you, let's just go there. So if you have signed on with someone that has all object and SecAdmin, you can just go ahead and assign a new password to that and continue on. And you can say that the password does not expire, or you can put an expiration interval on it. All right, so we'll just sign in here. So again, don't worry if you've forgotten the password, just go ahead and reset it. All right, so now I'm in the system store. And what I'm going to go to is the left-hand nav, and I'm going to say Manage Certificates. All right. And so I'm going to create a certificate, and I'm going to create a server or client certificate. That's what you want to see here. Click Continue. And again, I don't really have any other option because I haven't created my IBM I to be a local CA yet. So my only option really is VeriSign or other Internet Certificate Authority. So I'm going to click Continue. And I'm going to fill this out. Now, a word of warning, sometimes, depending on the certificate authority that you're using, they will have specific criteria and specific wording that you will need to use for this. We have a number of clients that use Komodo, and they have, I know, have some specific things that they have to do in a particular field for particular enterprises. So you will want to check with the CA that you're using just to make sure that you fill this out properly. I'm just going to fill this out for SkyView. Common name, SkyView Partners. Okay, and we'll just say this is for technical services. Again, it will make more sense for your organization to find out exactly what is required for each one of those fields. Now, the funny thing is, for sure, you will have to have a minimum of 3 characters for the state or province. So that's kind of strange, but that's the way that is. Okay, so when you create this, what we've actually done is create this thing called a CSR. It's a certificate request. And when you go through and request this from a well-known CA, you will have to create this request, or else they can't create the certificate for you. It's not like you can just fill out a form with your contact number and your company name. You've actually got to go through this process for them to create a certificate for you. And the interesting thing is that this request is not this middle portion. It's actually where the dashes begin and end. So if you've gone to a website, something like Saudi, you can kind of play around with this. They have free SSL certificates that you can create and request and use for 21 days for free. All of the major players have that type of thing. But as you walk through their website, they will say, do a certificate request, and then they'll have a place for you to cut and paste this information into. If you are using a local CA, something like Komodo, where you have a site license to issue server certificates, you'll probably take this, cut and paste it into a text file, email that text file to the person that's managing those certificates and issuing those certificates. So just understand that you'll have to include all of those dashes, both at the beginning and the end, for that request. Click OK, and now you've issued that request. Okay, so we're kind of back at the beginning of creating a certificate. What you do then is wait for that person to, or that entity to email you the certificate. You then will need to place that certificate, either FTP it into a directory in the IFS or drag and drop it. If you have a file share assigned, you can drag and drop that certificate to a path name in the IFS, and then you'll come back into Digital Certificate Manager, sign back in, and again select the certificate store of system, and then you'll come under Manage Certificates and you'll click on Import Certificate. And you'll be importing a server or client certificate. And at that point, you'll have to put the path name where you stored the certificate that came back to you from the well-known CA. So you'll get it imported. After that, you'll see a list of servers to which you can assign that certificate. And you'll see what that looks like in just a minute when I am creating the certificate from the local CA. But after that, you'll see the servers you can assign it to. If for some reason you don't, or you need to leave before you actually assign it, then you can come back in and you can say Assign Certificate. And once you have imported that certificate, there will be a list of certificates here. You can choose that one. It will allow you to assign it to the servers. So that's basically all you have to do in DCM if you are using a well-known CA. Okay, so that's scenario one. Scenario two. Okay, scenario two says we are going to use Digital Certificate Manager, and we are going to create a local CA, in other words, make IBM I my certificate authority. So to do that, I'm going to press F5 on this just to refresh and get back to the home page of Digital Certificate Manager. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to choose the option to create a certificate authority. So I come in here. And so now this is the actual CA, or the certificate authority. So I have to create a password for the certificate authority key store, and the name is going to be SkyView, oh my word, I can't type, SkyView Partners CA. All right, and my organization name is SkyView Partners, and the state or province again has to be 3 characters, and it's US. Now, the validity period for the certificate authority, I typically make this as long as possible. You may have regulatory requirements that you may not want to make it as long as possible. You may need to keep it at an annual basis, but I tend to make it the expiration interval as long as I can. Okay, so it has created the CA certificate for me. So now if I am going to use and assign a certificate assigned by my IBM I to one of my web applications, I will want to take advantage of this link that says right here to install the certificate. Now when it's installing the certificate in this case, it's installing it to my browser. It's not installing it to my client access configuration. It's installing it to my browser. I'm actually going to use it that way, so I'm going to go ahead and assign it to my browser. But you don't have to take that step. The only reason you would want to is if you're going to enable web applications to use and want to use that certificates assigned from that CA certificate. Okay, so now more about the certificate authority itself, what's going to issue the certificates. One of the things that you can do with this CA is issue user certificates. Now the only time you would ever want to issue user certificates is if you are also doing client authentication. So I described how the servers, the Telnet server, the FTP server, has to have a digital certificate assigned to it to make the encrypted connection. An optional piece of SSL is also to assign a certificate to the client. That is not very often done, and I'm not going to require that for this configuration. So when it says allow creation of user certificates, in this case, I'm just going to leave it at the default of no. Okay? So again, you can change the validity period for the server certificates that are going to be issued by the CA. Again, I tend to make that as long as possible, but once again, you may have regulatory requirements that says that you have to change out those certificates more often. All right, click continue. So what I can do at this point, and again, this is kind of a confusing screen, but all this is saying is, do you want to use the CA certificate for, in the case that you're going to do client authentication? And again, we are not going to do client authentication, so I'm not going to bother assigning the certificate. So you can just skip this part and say continue. All right, so there we are done with creating a certificate authority. Okay, done with that. All right, now I have my certificate authority created on my IBM I. So now I want to use it to create a server certificate, and I'm going to assign that server certificate to my Telnet and other servers. So again, we're kind of back at the home page, and that's exactly where I want to be. So I'm going to say select a certificate store, and I'm going to select the system store. Now this is a little confusing, so if you take the wrong path, don't be surprised and don't worry about it. But what you're wanting to do is get a server certificate, and server certificates have to be stored in the system certificate store. Okay, you may be tempted to go into the local certificate authority store. That's where I usually go, and then I realize I've taken the wrong path. So what you want to do is make sure you've gone into the system one. All right, and again, you have to enter the password. Okay, so we've got the certificate store, and that's what the current one is. So now I want to go into, again, create certificate. Okay, so now I get the option to say that I want to create a server or client certificate. If you had gone into the local CA certificate store, the only thing that you would be seeing is server or client certificate on another system running IBM I. That's not where you want to be. You want the one that says server or client certificate. So there we go. So again, I could say that I want to create another certificate from a well-known CA, but that's not the path we're taking. We want the local certificate authority to create this server certificate for us. And so again, we need to fill this out. SkyView Partners local, we'll call this. Partners. And again, we'll just make this for our technical services group. Washington, US. All right, so you'll see these extra fields down here. It's called subject alternative name. Those are fields that are typically used when you're making a VPN connection, which is not, it uses a different protocol than when you're using SSL. SSL does not typically require these fields to be filled in, so I leave them blank and click continue. Okay, so now this is what we want to be paying attention to. And this is the screen that you would get after importing the certificate from a well-known CA, all right, where it says that do you want to assign it. So here are all of our applications. And they're not really called servers. In the context of DCM, these servers are actually called applications. Okay, so this is where I can assign the server certificate that I just created to any of these things called applications, or in our terms, servers. So I'm going to go ahead and say select all. You can pick and choose which servers you want to assign that to, but it doesn't hurt to actually assign it to it all. Okay? the only time these servers or certificates come into play is when the client has been configured to make an SSL connection. The server can be assigned, and it will never come into play unless the client asks for an SSL request. If the client never asked for one, then the certificate will just sit there and it will always be unused. So it's not going to hurt anything to go ahead and assign the certificate to all of the servers. And that's just the easiest, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay. So the applications you selected will now use the certificate. Yay! All right, so we're done with that portion. So now we need to go back and we need to configure IBM iAccess to actually use that certificate. Okay, so we've done option 1 using the well-known CA, and we've gone through those steps. We've gone through option 2 using IBM I as the CA. All right, and we've gone through these steps. So we signed into DCM, we created the certificate authority, we created the CA certificate, we created the server certificate, we have assigned the certificate, the server certificate to the servers, and now we need to import the CA certificate to the clients. Okay, so that's where we're at in this process. Okay, so let's go into iNavigator, and we're going to go into the system that we've been working with. I am right-clicking on the system name. I'm going to go into Properties. Okay, so here we are at Properties. Now, one thing that you have to make sure of in your IBM iAccess install is that Secure Sockets has actually been installed. A lot of you, maybe as an administrator, have the full installation of IBM iAccess, but I know that a lot of you, especially for the end users, only have a partial install. So a lot of times that partial install does not include Secure Sockets. So what you're going to have to do is go back and reinstall that portion of IBM iAccess, or this setup will not work. All right, so I'm actually going to click on that link, or tab, I guess that is, not a link, it's a tab. So what I can do right now is do a verify SSL connection. Now, remember, I am going to, and I assigned to that certificate, those servers, the certificate that was issued by my IBM I. So look what happens when I say verify SSL connection. It's going to fail, and it's going to fail. If we looked at that return code, it would be because the certificate authority is not valid. So that's what happens when you don't have a server certificate issued by one of those well-known CAs. So what I'm going to do, and actually first, before I actually download that, I'm going to show you where that list is. So if you go into Start and All Programs and then go to IBM iAccess for Windows, come into the IBM Key Management. And this is going to come up. So you want to open, choose OK. The password is always CA400. Okay, so it's showing me certificates. I don't have any personal certificates, so I want to do is drop this down and say signer certificates. And this is the list of trusted signers that come with, this is the V7R1 iAccess client. Okay, so that's where that list is. So in this case, it resides in this path. Under the file name, you can see the path. Okay, that's where it resides for that particular client on a Windows 7 PC. All right, and there's the list of trusted signers. Now, nowhere in here is there a name for my IBM CA, right? So that's why it failed. That's why that connection failed. Now all I have to do is click download, and it's going to download that certificate authority certificate. Right, and that was that CA400 name again, or password that it was prompting me for. So if we go back into the IBM key management and we refresh this, I think I'll have to go into some other view to get this refreshed. We come back in, there we go, SkyView 3CA. So that is now in my list of trusted signers. So when I say verify SSL connection, in this case, still didn't work, right? Okay, well, what you have to do is actually close and reopen iNavigator. So you might think that it would work the first time. It probably should have, but for whatever reason it didn't. So we'll go back in there. And now when we go to properties, we open this back up and we say verify SSL. Aha, success signs. So I did that on purpose because I wanted you to see what happens when you get the failure. I didn't want you to panic. Just close down iNavigator and bring it back up and you're good to go. Okay, so what do I mean by good to go? All right, so I'm going to click on this and say use secure sockets layer for the connection. And it's going to require me to close and open this back up one more time. All right, here we go as it comes back up. And now what you see is that we have a padlock. Let me make that full screen so you can see it a little bigger. We have a padlock. That means that I now am connecting via an SSL connection. Okay, so let's see one other example of that. I have a 5250 session, same system, and again I have an open padlock. So I am over an unencrypted session. So if I come to communication and say configure, note that at this point in time you can see that it's port 23, which is the open port, the non-SSL version of Telnet. That's that port number. If I come into properties and I say use secure sockets layer, click OK, the port number changes to 992. I click OK. It's again going to want to reconnect here. And now when it connects, it's going to connect as a secure session. So that's really as simple as it gets. So in the handouts, I show a couple other places that you can go to configure things like your ODBC connections and your data transfer connections. So those are in the handouts. So I'm going to go back to the handouts. Okay, configuring iAccess. So here's the thing. When you start to configure it, now I have just configured this in the space of less than an hour. So it's actually not a difficult thing to do. The problem is when you need to roll this configuration out to your entire organization. What I recommend that you do is start with yourself and any other administrators, and then you start to fan out to the folks that have command line access. That's probably people like your programmers and anybody else that signs on with All Object Special Authority. In fact, those are the ones that you want to make sure that you get configured first, because if anybody is going to steal passwords, the ones that they are looking to sniff are the ones of the administrator password. If you go back and look at the recent hacking activity, how were they able to penetrate so far into networks? It's because they were able to steal administrator user ID and passwords. And so you want to make sure that your IBM passwords are protected. One way to do that is with using an SSL connection. Those passwords will not be flowing in the clear any longer as long as you're using SSL. So obviously the first ones you want to protect are anyone that is signing on as a powerful profile, meaning anybody with All Object Special Authority. So the other thing about that set of people is that it's really easy to identify them. You can go to the workstation, help them get it configured, and it's really pretty easy and good to go. The way that a lot of people will roll it out to the entire organization is to modify the desktop image. So as new people are hired and new desktops are rolled out or replaced, they are replaced with the image, number one, containing the SSL configuration for iAccess, so that has to be there, as well as the configuration settings to say use SSL, as well as that certificate authority that has issued the certificate. So if it's a well-known CA, not such a big deal, but if it's a local CA or a CA that is not in that list of trusted signer, that has to be rolled out as well. So what, again, a lot of people will do will start with that desktop image. Now, if you want to proactively roll it out to the rest of your organization and not wait for that desktop image to go around, what a lot of people will do is push out the new configuration, the updated files with the new configuration using whatever process they push out, like Windows updates or new policies that are assigned to the workstation. So a lot of people will have a process that they use to push that out. Now, I have not listed the exact files that need to be listed out. For one reason, they vary, the location will vary based on the iAccess version that you are running and the Windows version that you're running. So it's a different location for things like XP versus Windows 7 versus Windows 8 and so forth. So I've just sort of reminded you that the path where the key database, and that's what this is called, we're seeing a view of the key database. It's basically where your certificates are stored on your workstation. So the path for me for the V7 version of iAccess at running Windows 7 was along this path. So what you can do is, and this is the file that contains this list of trusted signers, so for sure that file name, whatever path it's on for you, has to be pushed out. And then what I recommend that you do is look in that path for other changed files as you have made the configuration. And again, the number is going to vary depending on what all you configure to use SSL. The other thing is that IBM has that list of files that you have to push out. So if you have a service contract with IBM, give them a call and find out exactly which files need to be pushed out. Okay, so if you are wanting to use an SSL-enabled Telnet, meaning Telnet from one IBM I to another, depending on what release you're running, you may have to have some PTFs assigned, all right? And on Telnet, or I'm sorry, for FTP, again, you're going to have an SSL-enabled FTP client on your PC if you're doing this from your PC, or the FTP-enabled client on IBM I if you're going between those two systems. But all of that is available. You just have to make sure that the client that you're using is enabled to make that SSL request. Now, I'm going to go back to Telnet. So as you roll this out, and as you roll this out amongst your clients, your workstations in your enterprise, you can have both port 23 and 992 active. That's not a problem. So as you roll this out, you do not have to immediately convert everybody to use SSL. That actually rarely happens. But once you think that you've got everybody using SSL-enabled Telnet, you will want to either block port 23 or configure the Telnet server to only service an SSL connection. Okay, so that's an attribute on the Telnet server. So one or the other you will want to do once you have gotten everybody connected, because once you block that port or only service an SSL connection, all unencrypted sessions are going to fail. Now that's probably your desired effect, but you have to make sure that you've accommodated all your clients coming in first. All right, so configuring a web application to use SSL. So if you are going to want to use, for example, the Policy Minder GUI over an SSL session, there is one more step that you will have to take before you can actually do that, because until you actually go in to configure the application itself to use SSL, it's not going to be in the list, so you can't assign a certificate to it. So let me show you that real quickly. We're going to go back. I'm actually going to go back to the IBM System Director page, and we're going to go into IBM Web Administration. So this is basically the home page for the web administration. I'm going to click on Manage, and then I'm going to click on the server that I want to manage. In this case, it's SkyView Web. And I'm going to click on Security in the left-hand pane here. By default, SSL is not enabled. It would be disabled. Okay, so you would come in and that's what you would see. I've already enabled it. So when you click on Enabled, you're also going to have to enter a server certificate application name. This is the name that's going to appear when we go back into DCM. All right, and when you go from disabled to enabled, this name actually pops up for you. So all you have to do is choose it. Or if you want to do a different name, you can do a different name. Okay, so it will pop up like this. But we can just say, we're just going to choose that one. Okay, then all you have to do is say Apply and OK. So then, and you'll have to, once we get it configured and assign a certificate, you will have to stop and restart it to have that take effect. But now we can go back into Digital Certificate Manager, and we can go into Manage Applications. Remember I said that that's really, we kind of call them servers, but in DCM they're called applications. And now I can say that I want to, well, I can view the application definition, but I want to actually update the application definition in that case. And in that case, I want to update here. Now we can see that the IBM HTTP server for SkyView is actually here. And I can update the application information. So that allows me to go in and actually assign a certificate to it, had it not already had one. All right? So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that you had to go into the server administration, make sure you just click on security and enable the SSL. That will then make that name appear in DCM, and then you can assign the certificate for you, to the server for you. So now to have it take effect, all I have to do is stop and restart that server, and then the connection will be made over SSL. All right. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through the part of importing and exporting server certificates to another IBM I. That, again, is something that's very easy to do, and I have step-by-step instructions in the screenshot. But in order to hold this to an hour, I am not able to show that. And actually, I wasn't planning to show that, so it's not like I'm skipping this, I've put it in the handouts for you. So one of the things, and it's certainly last but not least, is that you need to back up this work that you've done. So all of these files are stored in the IFS, so you will need to use the save command to save them. And so you have to make sure that that's part of your save strategy. Certainly if you are doing a save sys, where you're saving the entire system, it's backed up that way. It's also backed up when you run save sec data. Okay, so I hope that you have found this to be of use. It was, again, meant to be a step-by-step instruction. The demo has followed the handouts, so hopefully you've been able to take notes on your handouts. But I realize that you might have some questions about this, so if you do, or if we can be of help in any other way, I encourage you to send email to info@skyviewpartners.com, and we'll be glad to help you out. With that, we'll end this session and wish you a good day. Thank you so much.